Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshack if you want to call me by my in-game name, and it's about that time we go over and talk about our legendary Disenchant guide. I wanted to kind of wait till I played with all of these cards and got an accurate kind of representation of what these new cards mean, because I don't want to give anybody any of the wrong information in regards to what to craft, what to disenchant, and kind of rate these cards in the wrong way. So again, sorry for the delay on this video, but again, I wanted to make sure the information I had, I felt really comfortable giving it to you guys. So for those of you who are new to our legendary disenchant video, we go over every single legendary in the standard rotation. I basically break down the cards and whether or not you should disenchant them with a tier system. Our tier 1 is going to be kind of the best legendaries. Never disenchant these guys, and if you don't have them, they're good legendaries to kind of look out to craft. Our tier 2 legendaries are going to be, again, not as good as tier 1, of course, because the tier 1s are going to be the best, but then again, don't overlook them, because let's say you are building a deck and you have like a Sonaris in your Druid deck, right? And you really don't have a really great card to replace this guy with. You have like War Golem, right? So Sonaris is better than War Golem, but let's say he's not as good as Fandral in some decks, for example. So in some situations, you wouldn't disenchant a Sonaris and then have nothing to replace him with. So you would keep your tier 2 legendaries until you can adequately replace them with something else. Then it's safe to kind of DE them. But even then, it's good to hold on to the tier 2 legendaries if they're in decks that you're playing and you feel comfortable with. However, the tier 3 legendaries, which are basically just they're horrible and you'll never need them and you can disenchant them without a worry, those guys you don't have to, again, you don't have to worry about them. Those are your Nat Pagels, your Lore Walker Chos, stuff like that. You can get rid of them. You don't have to have a second thought about it. They're never going to be useful, and I don't want to stray you wrong in that direction. So without further ado, those are a tier 3 tier system. Again, 1 being never, 2 being good, but there is better, but I would probably keep it until you find direct replacement. And again, 3, you can get rid of it, no big deal. Jungle Giants is gonna fall under tier 3. Absolutely horrible. You can disenchant this, no problem. And then there's gonna be some people, Rob, why? This card is so good. It turns all of your minions into 0 cost creatures. As good as this sounds, there's just other legendary quests that are so much better. There's a reason that quest Druid isn't a thing, but yet ramp Druid is a really big thing. We already did our deck guide on that, and if you haven't seen it, it's a really cool deck, really fun deck, and I think much better than a quest Druid deck. And you could be like, well, Rob, why would you rather play 1 to 2 big minions a turn rather than just like a whole bunch of them? The reason being, ramp Druid depends on card draw. It's very important for the deck to be able to ramp out and then draw to be able to get to your big creatures. Having this in your opening hand really isn't good for your being able to, of course, get the ramp you need for the early game, and also the draw you're going to need to make up for the ramp that you're doing. So it's just not good in the starting hand. Really slow versus any aggressive decks. Pirate Warriors, the Rogue Quest deck, you're going to get absolutely annihilated. On top of that, being able to play a bunch of creatures in one turn, as good as it sounds, it's really prone to AoE. Twisting Nether, Flame Strike, Meteor, whatever the case may be, a brawl, a lot of the time, just playing a bunch of minions in one turn, not the best thing. Playing 1 or 2, spacing out your threats is the best deal. So Jungle Giants, safely DE that, no problem. Fandral, great card, definitely tier 1, fits into a ton of different decks, whether you're playing Jade Golem Druid, Token Druid. It's just one of those big cards that your opponent, if they don't deal with it, it can generate you a tremendous amount of value, whether you're playing it with like Druid of the Claw or Nourish. And even if they do kill it, they're normally using like a pretty large amount of resources to deal with it that early in the game, even if you don't have, like, say, a Nourish in your hand. So you can kind of just throw this guy out there all willy-nilly, like, and then your opponent's like, oh shit, gotta kill Fandral, and they use like 2 or 3 cards that they were planning to use for something else, and you kind of not only took them off guard, but you made them extend more resources than what they really needed to, because you didn't even have the choose ones anyway. Sonaris is going to be a tier 2. The card is good, but there is better. For example, like Fandral. Like, I would definitely play Fandral over Sonaris in my Jade Golem Druid, in my Token Druid, all that good stuff. Even in Ramp Druid, Sonaris isn't even found. So I can't really give this guy that great of a review. But for those of you who are, you know, you're newer to Hearthstone, or you're intermediate, and you really don't have some of those, you know, big dick swingers, as we like to call them, the big legendaries, he's not a bad one to just have, you know, and he can definitely come in clutch in some spots, but he's just not as powerful as some of the rest. So definitely tier 2 with this guy. Kun the Forgotten King. While Aviana Kun combo was available to us, with this new standard rotation, Aviana is no longer available. Or for those of you who caught us in our last Disenchant guide, Nivea. He's still a okay card. Again, I don't want to rate him as absolute trash, but he's like 2.5. He's real close to 3, and he's not, I don't want to say a 2, because I would definitely rate Sonaris much higher than Kuhn now that Anivia again has cycled out. So I would definitely put this guy as a card you could pretty much disenchant safely without having to worry. But again, if you're like, let's say you open up your first couple packs, you've only been playing Hearthstone a week, and you open Kuhn and you really love Druid, hang on to him for at least a little bit, see how you like him, and then you could probably safely disenchant him in a little bit. Tyrantus, this guy is only going to be basically found in ramp Druid decks, and that it's a very specific deck that you're looking for, ramp Druid, and it's a very expensive deck. So this is a card for those of you, again, newer to intermediate players. You can kind of write them off as a tier 3. You don't really need them, because I don't think you're going to be building a deck that costs over 20,000 dust anytime soon. It's just not worth it for you guys, to be honest. Ramp Druid's a fun deck, and it's pretty good, but it's just better crafting, the decks in the 3,000 or 4,000 dust range, and you can craft, 4 or 5 decks instead of crafting one huge, Ramp Druid deck. So you could probably safely disenchant Tyrantus, and there'll be no big deal there. I'm gonna go turn off the mini fridge real fast. That fucker's always turning on, so there'll be a slight cut right here. All right, so heading on to Hunter, we have the Marsh Queen, the Hunter legendary quest. This is a quest that everybody originally thought was going to be meta breaking. It was going to be crazy good, and it was really going to put the hunters on the map. Long behold, this card didn't put hunters on the map. This actually, we did a lot of testing with this particular quest, and we found that just normal mid-range hunter or aggressive hunter it's a lot more consistent and a lot better than the quest hunter is. So this is, I don't want to say it's a tier 3 because it's not the worst legendary quest, but it again is nowhere near the most powerful legendary quest like the warrior and the rogue, which we'll get to shortly. So again, this, I want to put it like 2.5, 3-ish almost, because you just don't need it. It's just not, it's not worth 1,600 to craft, and with that 400 dust you could get from this, you could be crafting Savannah Highmanes, which in my opinion are a lot better than this particular quest. Knuckles, this is pretty, this is an easy disenchant. Interesting card. It's decent. So again, 2.5-ish. I would hold on to him if you just got him. Maybe throw him in your mid-range hunter for testing. But again, if like, let's say you have the option to craft, you don't have Savannah Highmanes, or if you're wanting to craft like, what is it? It's Rat Pat, but the other one that goes along with it, the 4-drop 3/3 wolf, it's not coming to my mind. I'm actually gonna have to look that up right now because this is driving me crazy. I know this is normally right here, infested wolf. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. But like, let's say you're missing Savannah Highmanes and like your infested wolf, it's definitely worth to just disenchant Knuckles and get those guys in the deck rather than to have this guy, because this guy isn't even near as powerful as Savannah Highmane or things like that. So easy disenchant there. Princess Huntarian. I just fucked it up. I'm just gonna call him Princess. I'm sorry, guys. She's been around a while, haven't really seen her played a bunch. Pretty safe to disenchant here. Again, in just comparison to some of the other cards that you can play in Hunter, there's just not a lot of there's not a lot of room for the princess, right? So it's kind of safe, again, to disenchant her, tier 3 for sure. Swamp King Dread, however, very interesting card. Did a decent amount of testing, and this is a card, just like the 4-drop 7/7, it disrupts your opponent's turn very severely. Also with its ability to not only have huge amounts of stats, it can attack during your opponent's turn. So if they don't have like a poisonous card or like a bunch of mini things that they can throw out and kill this guy, this is just one of those guys that you throw out there, and if he makes contact to your opponent's face, or he can kill like 2 or 3 creatures, you're pretty in the clear. So I would definitely actually hold on to this guy, and if try him out in your mid-range hunter. And let's say you don't like the card, then you could probably disenchant him. I'd put him in the tier 2 section. But he's definitely not one of the worst legendaries, and he definitely fits in some decks. King Crush, again, I've been playing this game since alpha, and there's a reason this guy isn't even crafted in my collection. I would put him in low tier 2 again. If you're newer, you could throw him in your deck just to have him in there because he's not the worst card in the world. But if you don't have Savannah Highmanes and infested wolves and rat packs and things, packs. Holy crap. You can definitely throw them in there, or disenchant them and throw those other cards in there instead. Moving on to Mage, we have Open the Waygate. So very specific deck that this particular Mage quest goes into. It's normally with the OTK Arcane Giant Mage or the Exodia Mage. There's also my Tempo Time Warp Secret Mage that I'm brewing up. Very spicy. Not the most competitive deck, but very fun deck at that. So I wouldn't go out of my way to craft Open the Way Gate, because there's other decks that you can play, like Freeze Mage, Tempo Mage, Secret Mage, that don't run this card and are probably just as good as decks with this card, even maybe more so consistent than this card. But if you already have it, I would actually hold on to it for a little bit. So definitely tier 2 in my opinion. Not one of the most powerful legendaries, not a tier 1, but again, not one of the lower ones like Hunter and or Druid. Pyros, very interesting guy. Fits into, of course, Elemental Mage very, very nicely. I've actually been brewing up a Control Mage, and it's been very successful so far. And even in that deck, I'm not running Pyros, even though Pyros is a very control-y kind of value-based card. So I figure if you're going to be running, you know, an Elemental Mage, he's your guy, right? But if you have no intention to run Elemental Mage, you really don't have to worry about having Pyros in your collection, because he basically only fits into that Elemental Mage slot. He could maybe fit into Tempo Mage just because of the ability to play him on turn 2, 6, and then 10 if the game even goes on that long. But there's, again, other cards that you could easily replace him with in Tempo Mage that would probably perform just as well or even better. So again, tier 2 legendary for sure. I wouldn't go out of my way to disenchant him, but he's not one that if you disenchant, you're going to be like severely hurt. Archmage Antonidas, T1 for sure. This guy is he's the big dick swinger of the Mage legendaries. He's part of the classic set. He's not going anywhere. You can't go wrong with crafting him, and you really do not want to disenchant him. Due to the fact that it's just, you can put him in basically whatever mage deck you want and he will get you wins. He's just a super, super consistent, very powerful card. If left unchecked, guarantee will win you the game. It's just, you can't get over the cast a spell, get a fireball. Nothing beats that. Ink Master, when, you know, Reno Mage was a thing and it was pretty top tier 2, definitely close to tier 1, if not tier 1. There was builds with Ink Master Solia in the particular Kazakus or Reno Mage decks. Now that Reno is in Wild and there's only Kazakus currently in the standard set, Ink Master has lost a lot of the buzz and a lot of her powerhouse abilities. So with that definitely lowers her rankings down to, like, to me, tier 3. I didn't even play her in my Reno Mage deck, and when Reno was a thing. So you could safely disenchant her at this time, and it's not going to really hurt you whatsoever. And Anomalous falls under the same category. I mean, this card's just absolutely awful. This is, oh, Jesus. Like, let's say you get him off some random mage ability like Babbling Book, or not even maybe no, Babbling Book gives you spells. I don't know. Some random card that gives you a random ability, and it pulls out an Anomalous, and you happen to need a board clear. Sure, those particular situations, he could come in clutch. But to actually play this card in your deck, even on my free-to-play account, I wouldn't play this card in my deck. I would disenchant him immediately and look for, like, I'd rather craft 2 Primal Glyphs than have this guy in my deck, because Primal Glyph is actually really good. Moving on to the Paladin, the Paladin quest. Tested it, not that exciting, again, in comparison to like the Rogue and the Warrior, which I'm going to keep hammering out, because those guys are just, those quests are just tier 1 for sure. Those just reek of just powerhouses of cards. So to craft this, probably not. If you really feel like testing it, you can, but disenchanting it, it's not going to hurt you right now. Just getting a Galvadon isn't worth like playing a whole deck around this one card that dies to a Twisting Nether, or, you know, just any AoE or single target removal. It's just not worth it. I suppose, yes, in some meme decks it could prove to be like an OTK sometimes. So if you're looking for it to win, you know, 1 out of 10 games with some huge Galvadon, sure, you can do that. But for consistency purposes and actually looking to build a very good deck, this isn't the card you're looking for. Wicker Flame Burn Bristle, really decent card. I can't complain about him. Not tier 1, but definitely tier 2 for sure. I wouldn't actually, I'd put him, well, maybe 1.5, right? Because he fits into a lot. He fits into kind of any Paladin deck you need him to, right? You want to play Control Paladin, he fits there. If you want to play maybe an aggressive paced Paladin, or aggressive based. Thank you for speaking English, Rob. He fits in there as well. You can't really complain. So I would definitely hold on to him for sure. Sunkeeper, really, really solid legendary. Paladin is probably the one class that most of the legendaries are really good, besides this guy right here. So again, Burn Bristle, you can keep him. Sunkeeper, very, very powerful card. At first, it doesn't look that exciting, right? It just switches everything to 3 attack, but switches everything to having 3 attack and 3 HP. But with the ability to, of course, summon dudes whenever, with your hero power, and the ability to now have that 1 mana summon 2 Silverhand recruits. It's just the ability to generate basically tokens with Paladin is very much so increased with the new set. This guy is just extremely good at this moment. Rag the Light Lord, again, and just another really powerhouse Paladin legendary. I mean, you could literally play a deck with all of the Paladin legendaries and you really couldn't go wrong. So Ragnos the Light Lord, instead of throwing 8 damage fireballs at somebody, he heals you for 8, or he heals a friendly damage character for 8. Most Paladin decks actually run at least the Sunkeeper, Rag, and Tyrion if you have them, and of course Tyrion being part of the Paladin classic legendary cards. Fantastic. You can't. An 8 mana 6/6 Divine Shield, Taunt, Death Rattle, equipped at 5/3 Ashbringer. Like, that is just crazy value. If it doesn't get silenced, like, this guy just generates so much value. And especially if you're like toe to toe with your opponent and you throw down a Tyrion, that's just a huge lead for you, unless they have like the exact answer to deal with them, which is kind of like they either have to kill him and use like a Harrison or Acidic Swamp Ooze, they have to silence him. And even if they silence him, he's still a 6/6 that's going to cause some trouble. And even at that, he still gets brought back with N'Zoth if they silence him. So just a really solid Paladin card. Tier 1, or close to tier 1, tier 1, tier 1, tier 1, if I didn't mention that before. Awaken the Makers. How do I explain this? 1 second. All right, so most of if we notice the tier 1 quests, which are the Rogue and the Warrior, the quest gives them consistent value. If like with the Warrior, they can just 2 mana, 8 damage fireballs for the remainder of the game. Rogue, every card that they summon is a 5/5. With stuff like Priest, you're niched into building this Death Rattle Priest, which is very slow at that. Priest has always been slow, so Death Rattle Priest is even slower. We're talking the molasses slow right here. And then on top of that, it's going to give you the Warden of Hope, which is going to set your hero back to 40 HP. While 40 HP is great and all, this doesn't actually give you any sort of tempo on the board. It doesn't consistently generate large quantities of value over the course of the remainder of the game. All it does is it's basically a little bit better than a Reno Jackson. It's actually, I don't even think it's better than Reno Jackson, because Reno Jackson, you would build the deck with 1-ofs, and you could play Reno Jackson whenever you'd like for 6 mana whenever you draw him. In this situation, you actually have to have the quest cost a card in your opening hand, which makes it so, like, let's say you're facing an aggressive base deck, you don't even have time to hold this in your opening hand because you're looking for your AoEs like Dragonfire Potion, Potion of Madness, maybe Holy Nova if you have it, like some of your taunts. It's just not it's just too slow. It's just not a good legendary quest in regards to the other ones that they printed. Tier 3 for sure. You don't need it. Lyra, this was actually kind of like a meme card at first, but everybody's like, oh, Lyra's gonna be, well, at first it was hyped up to be really good, then when people saw it, it was like, oh, this card is absolute trash, and then when the card actually gets released, it's one of the most sought after legendaries right now, due to the fact that like Meme Priest is what they're calling it, or Miracle Priest, is actually a really fun and pretty interesting deck to play in regards to being able to cast like an enormous amount of spells in one turn. And that is because of the new Priest card that's basically a Sorcerer's Apprentice. And with most Priest cards costing, you know, between 0 to 2 or 3 mana, if you have those 2 guys down, drop Lyra, and you're good to go for basically at least 5 to, I want to say, 10 spells if you get even somewhat lucky or kind of average luck. So I don't want to say tier 1 because it's not like this deck is super competitive right now. It's probably pretty good, but again, Quest Priest or Quest Rogue and Quest Warrior are just probably far superior, but definitely tier 2 for sure. Maybe closer to tier 1, so probably 1.5 on her. Raz of the Unchained, while Reno was a thing, Raz of the Unchained was good because you of course could run the Reno, Raza, and that whole package, but now it's just not as good. You just don't, no, tier 3, you don't need Raza. Unless you're running some meme priest. Herald has always been bad. He's still bad. Tier 3. Prophet Velen. This guy's part of the classic set. He's been around for a while, and he's seen his fair share of being in OTK priest decks. I would put him in tier 2 for sure. I wouldn't go out of my way to craft him just because he's okay. Again, if you're a beginner to an intermediate player, you don't really have much, and you really like priest, he can definitely fit in your deck, and he'll definitely do some work in regards to being able to double the damage of your healing spells and your damaging spells. So if he sticks around, he generates a lot of value, but again, just too slow, and he just is not really seen in competitive play that often. Keep in mind, all of my reviews right now are all of my reviews and all of my recommendations are in regards to competitive play and playing on ladder and trying to kind of play good decks. So just keep that in mind, yeah. The caverns below, this is the rogue legendary quest. Again, one of the most powerful, like I mentioned before, this and also warrior, just super good, and tier 1 for sure. Edwin Van Cleef has been around for a while. This is the rogue legendary, and has been seen whether you're playing miracle rogue, plant rogue, tempo rogue, and now he's even found in the new quest rogue. You could actually go without playing Edwin. He's not in my quest rogue, but he's still a good card at that, and I would definitely keep him for sure. Shaku the Collector was actually, people made fun of this guy for the longest time before he was actually played. This guy probably sat around for like 2 or 3 months without actually people testing him. And then eventually people started to getting around to putting him in the decks, and they were actually very surprised with the results that he gave, because if your opponent does not kill this guy, you will continuously be able to generate cards from your opponent's class, which is actually pretty good. It generates a lot of value. So I definitely rate this guy. It's not like the most powerful legendary. He's not like the legendary rogue quest that can single-handedly win you games. The deck is built around it, because you don't build a deck around Shaku the Collector, but he's a really good card to have whether you're putting him again in Miracle Rogue, Plant Rogue, or Tempo Rogue, and definitely good card. So I don't want to rate him as a tier 2 because you don't want to disenchant him, but probably upwards close to tier 1, but again, not as good as like the caverns below. Looking at the Corpse Flower, people looked at this card. Again, this is one of those cards that in the review before this set came out, everybody said this card was going to be pretty bad. And they were like, oh, you know, play 4 cards in a turn just to revive a 5/3. This card is too slow. You're going to run out of gas. Little did they know this is going to be like one of those guys that really pumps the deck through. And it's kind of why they call it Plant Rogue. It's super good because of the new Razor Petal cards, which are 1 mana, basically Moonfires. And you in combination with like Auctioneer, the Collector, the Swashbuckler, you're able to cast, you know, you're easily able to cast 4 cards per turn every turn to bring this guy continuously back to life, as long as you can kind of keep the ball rolling and keep snowballing the game. So definitely tier 1 in regards to the Corpse Flower. Poison Mind, super good card in a particular deck, which is kind of like the Tempo Rogue deck. We did a couple deck guides on that back in the day when Mean Streets was first out, but now that the deck is not as popular and there's all these new cards to play with, and most people are running the Quest Rogue or the Plant Rogue, both of those decks don't really run Poison Mind, or if they do, he's not really like a super staple. I would put him in tier 2 in regards to there are better cards, but if you don't have those cards, he's still like a good card on his own to play because he synergizes well with cards like Auctioneer, which is almost always found in the Rogue deck because of the 2 random toxin he generates, which are both 1 mana, and they either, you know, draw you a card, buff your board, return cards to your hand, give them stealth. Just overall good value. We're going to head on over to Shaman, but there's someone at my door now, so hold on, another cut, guys. So moving on to Halazil, this was found in Control Shaman decks back when Elemental Destruction was in the picture, and he was nicknamed kind of the Reno Jackson of the Shaman class in regards that you could play Halazil, Elemental Destruction, in total of 8 mana, basically kills the entire board, dealing 4 to 6 damage to everything, and you'd heal up for however much damage is done and how many creatures or items are on the particular board at that point in time. Now that that's not really a big thing, there's just a lot of good healing mechanics with the Water Speaker and the Hot Spring Guardian that you really don't need Halazil. In regards to stats, he's not bad. A 5-drop 4/6. I mean, Reno Jackson was a 6-drop 4/6, and normally the stats of Reno were pretty good, so playing a 5-drop 4/6 that also can heal you when you cast spells is pretty good. But is he in any top tier decks right now? Not really. Is he a card that I would disenchant the first time I get him? No. So I'd put him in tier 2 for the time being, but he's definitely nowhere near the best of the best. Wide Eyes, I like this card a lot in my opinion. You can put him in mid-range decks, you can put him in control decks. The only thing you can't really do is put him in aggressive base decks, but right now aggro Shaman isn't really a thing. So in regards to disenchanting him, I wouldn't recommend it. I would put him pretty close to tier 1, just because of the flexibility of being able to put him into kind of whatever Shaman deck you're looking to build, whether you're playing Jades, Elementals, N'Zoth, Control. It's just it's a good card to have, and it's, like I said, very flexible. Alakir the Windlord, this is again the classic Shaman legendary. Is not going around, just like Tyrion and Archmage Antonidas. This guy is going to be sticking around for quite some time, so it's not, I don't recommend disenchanting him, just because sometimes this card is really good and he's found in Shaman decks in the meta, and then sometimes he's not as prominent. Like at this moment, he's probably not the best legendary to have, but who's to say in 3 or 4 months, you know, this guy all of a sudden combos with another 2 mana or another minion and he turns into one of like the top, you know, best cards to have in your Shaman deck. It's hard to say because, you know, this guy is it's a wavy dude. Sometimes he's really good, sometimes he's really bad, and it's just not a bad card to just have in general. So, you know, getting close to tier 1 with this guy. The Primal Lord, it's basically a have-to-have if you're playing Elemental Shaman. If you don't plan on playing Elemental Shaman, again, you don't have to have the Primal Lord, but if you do intend to play any form of Elemental Shaman whatsoever, this is kind of like a key card you have to have. So in referring to Elemental decks, or Elemental Shaman, I should say, tier 1 must have. In regards to any other deck, because he's not like a neutral card, and because he's very strictly an Elemental here, like with the Wide Eyes, you could put this guy into kind of any Shaman deck, like I mentioned. He's kind of like the neutral legendaries of the Shaman class. You can fit him in kind of wherever besides aggro. But the Primal Lord, this guy is very, very singular in the archetype of Elemental Shaman. That's where he fits, and that's it. So just keep that in mind, but definitely tier 1 in regards to Elemental Shaman. So moving along to Warlock, kind of an underwhelming class at the moment. This is like the new worst class. It was Paladin and Hunter before, and now it's kind of Warlock. So Lakari Sacrifice, the discard mechanic, as good as it can be if you get lucky with your RNG, you draw the right cards, you discard the right cards, and with discarding, it's all random. You don't get to pick which cards you discard. You know, you could actually just steamroll your opponent some games, you know. You get your Soul Fires, you get your Doom Guards, the Doom Guards, you know, discard the Clutch Mother and discard your Silverware Golems or whatnot, and then all of a sudden you're sitting pretty, right? But some games you play this and you don't ever draw your discard cards and you're sitting there and you just get wrecked. Just in regards to consistency, this quest is really bad in comparison to the Warrior and the Rogue, which it's not even a comparison at all. It's just not even close to the amount of consistency or value that those other ones provide. So tier 3 in regards to that. The Clutch Mother, again, fitting into a very niche kind of deck, the discard Warlock. You could also fit her into maybe like discard Zoo Warlock, but again, with Warlock not being that great of a class, I can't recommend you guys go out of your way to craft cards that are just in a bad class right now, right? Like if you're looking for cards to craft, Warrior, Rogue, you know, even Hunter, Mage, all of those are kind of good classes to aim at to craft cards because they're very competitive, very good decks. But in regards to Warlock right now, it's just not, Warlock and Priest, they're just not really, you know, competitive, which makes it not good. So you're crafting cards to go into bad decks, and you play bad decks and you get discouraged because you're not doing well, even though you just, you know, crafted a bunch of new cards. So again, really good ability in regards to like you discard this card twice, she's a 2-drop 6/6 and she keeps coming back to your hand. If that works out, she's tier 1, right? You never draw this card or you never discard her, she's tier 3. She's horrible. So it's just all about RNG in regards to this card, so it's hard to rate it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to craft it if I were you guys. Cho'Gall, just no. Just don't do that to yourself. A Cruelly Unshackled, again, this is just no. Why would you play either of these cards when Lord Jaraxxus is a thing, right? This guy is the be-all, end-all. If you want to play a Warlock deck, you just throw Jaraxxus in there and the deck is automatically better. Whether you're, I guess if you're playing Zoo, then no. But if you're playing any form of Handlock, which I would say is the most powerful Warlock like archetype right now, like if you're dead set on playing Warlock, play Handlock. You don't need any of these cards. You could get away with just playing Lord Jaraxxus, and then you'll be good to go. This guy's been around since, again, the classic set. If you have him, keep him forever. Keep him close to your heart. Lord Drax, nothing's a better cuddle buddy than this bro right here. And just so much value. So much value. So keep the Draxes tier 1 for sure. Fireplume's Heart, definitely I crafted this bad boy in gold. Having a golden Ragnaros hero power was too much value not to, right? So right along with the rogue legendary quest, this card is great. Taunt Warrior tier 1 deck for sure, and it's just a really, in my opinion, I like Control Warrior and Quest Warrior is pretty close to it in regards to kind of the game plan of the deck. So just good card as is, great card to craft, tier 1 for sure. This guy is absolutely horrible. People tried to throw him into Pirate Warrior originally when he first came out and then realized, oh wait, a lot of the weapons that we're creating are from our N'Zoth's first mate, or we're upgrading stuff, and just adding 1 attack and not a durability doesn't really mean as much. Plus he's a 2-drop 2/2. If this guy was a pirate, maybe he would be played, but the fact that he's not even a pirate, no way Jose. Malkarok, he's good. I wouldn't disenchant him if I were you guys. He fits well, actually. He fits well into a very particular archetype, which is kind of tempo warrior, or like, I don't want to say aggressive warrior because he's not found in like pirates, but he is found in like dragon warrior, which isn't it's not really a thing right now, but he is found in like this tempo warrior build. And again, not that popular. If you're looking to play a warrior deck, you might as well. If you have like the option to play Tempo Warrior, craft Malkarok, or Fireplume's Heart, it's Fireplume's Heart hands down every time. So this, I would definitely put him in tier 2 for the time being. He's not a terrible legendary. He's just not even close to like Fireplume's Heart or Hellscream, right? So this guy, again, classic warrior legendary. Can't go wrong with him. He's going to be around for a long time. Great card, fits into kind of whatever warrior deck you're wanting. Doesn't necessarily fit into the exact slot of Taunt Warrior right now. So again, if you're trying to build a Taunt Warrior and you have the options of Fireplume's Heart or Hellscream, obviously the quest is much better. But in regards to just like good warrior legendaries to craft, Hellscream is never a wrong answer. And then King Mosh, a lot of you guys, or a lot of people are like, wow, he's so good. You play Whirlwind King Mosh, he clears the entire board. Yay! All right, that's a 2-card combo to clear the entire board along with your minions. And it's a turn 10 clear. You have 2 brawls in the deck. The brawls cost 5 mana, and it clears the entire board. No 2-card combo. You can play 2 of them. You also have Whirlwind, Sleep with the Fishes, so there's just better removal than King Mosh. He's not necessary. So if you have the card and you really want to play him, go right ahead. But if you're really wanting to hammer out your warrior deck and get it to those top tier levels, this isn't a card that you're gonna miss if you disenchant him. Again, not one of the worst legendaries, tier 2 for sure, but he's just not great, you know what I'm saying? There's just better cards. So like, let's say I have the option to play King Mosh or a Brawl, you better believe I'm picking Brawls over King Mosh. So moving on to the neutral legendaries, there's a little bit more neutral legendaries than not, so I'm not going to go into as much detail as these, but Patches for sure, tier 1. It fits into any pirate deck and any aggressive base deck that runs pirates. So we've seen him in Toka Druid, we've seen him in Zoo, we've seen him in Pirate Warrior, we've seen him in Pirate Rogue, we've seen him in Miracle Rogue. Patches is everywhere. It's just so much value generated by merely just playing a pirate to be able to summon a 1-drop 1/1, thinning your deck, getting value that you would have never gotten elsewise. Plus he has charge, and then also with the rogue quest, you know, this is a 1 mana basically 5/5 with charge. It's just craziness. Shifter Xeris, this is kind of like a RNG crazy fest, you know. Sometimes you could pull off some crazy stuff you never would have dreamed of, and then sometimes he just turns into absolute shit. I've played with him. He's cool and whatnot, but I would much rather play actual cards that we know what they do and are consistent than some random legendary dude that can turn into what the fuck ever. Blood Mage, very good, tier 1 for sure. Tier 2 for Shifter Xeris, only because, you know, he's better than not having, like, if I had a brand new account and I was given Shifter Xeris and then had all common cards, I would keep Shifter Xeris until I know what I'm going to do with the account, and then disenchant him into, like, you know, brawls. When you decide you know what you need, get the consistency cards. So I'd probably closer to tier 2.53. Blood Mage, tier 1 for sure. She fits into so many different decks, whether you're playing, you know, Shaman, Rogue, Even Druid at some times, she's really useful. So good card, and it's been around for a long time, part of the classic set, not really going anywhere, and it's just been a pretty good asset to most decks. Plus she's neutral, so she fits just about anywhere. Lore Walker Cho, tier 3, absolutely horrible. You don't have to worry about disenchanting this guy. Millhouse Mana Storm, tier 3, disenchant the fucker. You don't have to worry about him, no big deal. The only time you do, however, want Millhouse Mana Storm is when you're playing Wild and your piloted Shredder dies. Then you want Millhouse Mana Storm. Nat Pagel, you don't need him. You don't worry about Nat Bagel. Disenchant this guy, not a worry in the world. Nat the Dark Fisher, tier 3, disenchant him, no big deal, not a worry in the world. Same thing with the Beardo, get rid of him, tier 3. You just don't, again guys, I've been playing this game a really long time. I'm not going to tell you to disenchant cards you really need, or you really need, and I'm just trying to fuck your collection over. That's not my intention. I don't spend hours and hours making videos to fuck people over. You don't need these cards, and I'm not going to explain them that much. King Mukla, again, don't need it. There's so much better other consistent cards you can put in your deck. Not a big deal. Moros, he comes from the Karazhan expansion, and if you don't have him, no big deal. Some players play him in their Quest Rogue deck. He can be pretty annoying to deal with, so he turns into like a 5/5 that summons a 5/5 basically every turn. But honestly, he's a little bit too slow, because right now being able to summon a 5/5 every turn is as good as that is, which is really good. You can actually just play other cards like the elemental cards that just generate more 5/5s and don't have the drawback of only being useful after you play the quest, more so being useful at the start of the game, in the middle of the game, and at the end of the game. So you could actually disenchant Moros, no big deal. Sergeant Sally, you can disenchant her, again, no big deal, tier 3. Tinkmaster Overspark, he was actually useful. I used to play him in my Cthulhu Warrior deck to be able to transform their Cthulhu or Sylvanas into cards or into a Devilsaur or Squirrel, so they couldn't bring them back with either N'Zoth or a not Doomsayer, but Doomcaller. But at this time, not really needed. You could play him if you really want to. I would have to rate him a little bit higher than the previous card, so he's not necessarily tier 2. Actually, you could probably get rid of him and not have to worry about it, honestly. He's good to go. Barnes, good, fits into a couple decks. Can't really complain about him. Definitely hold on to him until at least he rotates out. Genzo the Shark, get rid of him. You don't need him. Again, I've tested all of these cards and they're exact decks that they would be best in, and they're still not even good. So you don't have to worry about him. Tier 3 for sure. Kazakus, this used to be tier 1, be all end all. Play him in every one of your Reno decks. If you have a Reno deck and you're not playing Kazukas or Kapukas or Kazakus, however you want to pronounce his name, you're missing out. Now that Reno has gone to Wild, Kazakus has taken a big hit. I'm sure they'll print more one-of cards later. So if you want to hang on to them, you really love your Reno decks or your one-of decks, you can keep them. I don't want to tell you to disenchant them, because maybe Reno decks later on in the year when they introduce more sets, this will actually come back. So I would put them on hold for now, to be completely honest. The Umbra, she's good in Death Rattle decks, and I actually play her in any Death Rattle deck that I'd be wanting to play, because if she doesn't die, she's a huge threat. So if you're interested in to control Death Rattle decks, she's a good card to put in there. Put her tier 2 for sure. The Vortex or the Vorax, it's just, there's better cards, you know what I'm saying? This fits into a very niche deck, and the deck really isn't even that good, so you could get away with disenchanting her. You really don't have to worry about it. Captain Greenskin, again, kind of the niche deck with being able to upgrade your weapon. I play him in my Pirate Warrior list because he's really good in regards to being he's a solid body, he's a pirate, and he upgrades your weapon. That's everything that Pirate Warrior wants to do, as long as you're not playing too many big bodies. So if you're a Pirate Warrior fan, you open up Greenskin, you can keep them. But for those of you who have no intention to play Pirate Warrior, you have no intention to do anything with pirates anymore, you're fuck pirates, I'm done with pirates, I hate playing against Pirate Warrior, you can disenchant this guy, not a worry in the world. Elise Trailblazer, this is the new Elise of the set. Before we could put, basically make our deck into all legendaries if you went off and got the Golden Monkey. This card is actually pretty good in the new, not Silence Priest, but Miracle Priest. She's really good with the Shadow Visions. She's also pretty good in Handlock, and she's also decent in this particular Control Paladin build. So I'd put her in low tier 1. but probably a little bit higher than tier 2 because I wouldn't disenchant her because she fits well into control decks. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're running Priest, Warrior, Paladin, I mean, even some control Shaman decks you can run her. So she's not like the best of the best, but she's still really good. Finja, I would keep it for sure. This in combination with the new water mechanic, not water mechanic, but the water package is what people call it. So you play double War Leader, double Charger, and Bluegill Warrior is what they call, and then you play Finja. It fits well in Token Druid, fits well in sometimes Pirate Warrior with the water package, works well in this like Tempo Rogue deck. So Finja's just a good card to have, and again, the water package, you can fit it into a whole bunch of different decks, and it's a very powerful mechanic. Harrison Jones, I'd keep this guy. He floats in and out of the meta depending on how popular weapons are. So when Pirate Warrior was a big issue, Harrison Jones was very popular. Back in the day when, you know, a lot of warriors played Gorehowl, he was really popular. So he's kind of just like the Paladin, or no, the Shaman legendary, Alakir the Windlord. Like I said, depending on, you know, how the meta's looking and what cards synergize and what's popular, what's not, he kind of goes up and down. So I would not disenchant your Harrison Jones because depending on how things look, he's actually pretty good. Leroy Jenkins, been around a long time. It's been nerfed from back when, and he still played after the nerf, which should tell you something. Okay, he's a 5-mana charge guy. 6 damage. So in any aggro based deck or any burst damage deck or any combo based deck, this is going to be a piece of the puzzle. And for as long as the Leroy Jenkins is going to be around, they're never going to print another card similar to Leroy Jenkins because they would literally just be printing a better Leroy. They can't print, you know, they can't print a 6 mana, you know, 8 damage charge. They can't print a 4 mana 6 damage charge. You know what I'm saying? So this is like the top of the list of being able to 5 mana 6 damage charge minion. So definitely tier 1 in regards to any aggressive combo based deck. I mean, it's just, you can't go wrong with Leroy in regards to those particular decks. Do not disenchant. Prinx Malkazar is just bad. You can disenchant him. Comes out of One Night in Karazhan. You're not missing anything by not having him. Aya, we call her the Panda Bitch. She's known as Aya Blackpaw in the game. This is a staple in any Jade Golem deck, whether you're running Shaman, Rogue, Druid, whatever kind of Jade Golem deck you're running. She's an absolute staple, so tier 1 for sure. Karen's been around for a really long time, and again, depending on the meta is where he shines or doesn't shine. Mean Streets, not Mean Streets, I think a little bit before Mean Streets, or as Mean Streets was coming out, this guy actually was really popular. And when N'Zoth came out, Old Gods, he was super popular because of the whole death rattle mechanic. So depending on, again, what the meta looks like, he's really good. Sometimes he's not so great. Like right now, he's really not played that much. But, you know, depending on how things look, he was actually found pretty often back in the day in Tempo Warrior and things like that. So I'd keep him for sure because he's just a classic legendary. He's not going anywhere, and he kind of floats around. Hemet fits in one particular deck. There's like some Mage Hemet deck floating around that Crip made that he played at rank 8 and he won a couple games in a row. People are like, oh my god, this deck's crazy. I mean, yeah, you can disenchant the card, guys. Don't worry about it. Just because one guy plays, you know, a deck at rank 8 and wins a couple games is not meta breaking. Hogger, this seems to be a guy, both are, we've had a couple free-to-play accounts now, and this Hogger guy has made its way into our free-to-play account. He just seems to be the first legendary we open up on that account over and over again. So I play him on my free-to-play account, and he does, some games he works wonders, and they just can't outvalue the Hogger. Some games he just gets shadow bolted down for 3 mana, and we spent 6 to bring him out. It just depends on the situation. Again, not the worst legendary in the world, so if you're a brand new player, open up the Hogger, play him in your deck, have fun with them. But if you're really looking to hone in on a particular deck, you can disenchant them and get yourself some better cards. Illidan falls under kind of the same same plan as Hogger. It's actually probably exactly the same plan as Hogger. Decent, but, you know, disenchant them for better stuff. Madame Goya absolutely sucks, tier 3. Mukla the Tyrant of the Veil, tier 3. The Beast, tier 3. Black Knight, really interesting card. I don't care if this website was okay. I don't know why that pop-up was. Hopefully you guys didn't see that pop-up. Depending on the meta, this guy pops in and out. He's not as popular as some of the other cards that pop in and out, like Harrison Jones. right now, a Taunt Warrior being a really big threat if you happen to open up like a Black Knight. He's not probably the worst card to put in your deck, especially if you can't afford some of the more, you know, expensive decks. He's not a bad one to throw in there if you're facing a lot of, you know, Taunt Warrior. But in regards to, like, let's say you play a Pirate Warrior, he's really bad. A 6 mana 4/5 that destroys like a 3/3 pirate, and if they're playing that 3/3 pirate for 0 mana anyway, you need some better stuff than the Black Knight. So you can disenchant him and you probably don't have to worry because he's not key to any decks, but at the same time, in some metas, he's actually pretty good. But in regards to like staples in decks, he's not one of them. Again, tier 3, this guy is horrible. Even in Dragon Priest, I didn't play this garbage guy. Baron Geddon, he was actually played in Control Warrior back when Control Warrior didn't have the legendary quest to fall back on, and he was sometimes found in Paladin decks along with some Warlock decks. Right now, he's not really a staple into any decks, similar to the Black Knight. You can tech him in here and there, but you could probably get away with disenchanting Baron, and you wouldn't really feel the hurt. Again, let's say you're looking to build a Warrior or a Hunter, and you don't have Savannah Highmanes or whatever kind of like staple card is in the deck, but you have a Baron Geddon. It's probably safe to disenchant the Baron Geddon to get those staple cards in the deck, because neither of these cards are staples in the deck. Same thing with Illidan and Hogger. Don Handshow, played him in a couple hand buff decks. He's good in those particular hand buff decks, and by good I mean the semi-mediocre deck that hand buff decks are. They were never serious. They were okay. At best, they were kind of memey because you could like Battle Cry, give a random in your hand +5/+5, and that's like a Leroy Jenkins or like a charge minion, and you could like charge out your opponent with like a 15+ damage if they landed a couple other hand buffs on him. But besides that, you can disenchant this guy without a worry. Hogger, Doom of Enwyn, no, tier 3. Curator, pretty good. He's a staple in some decks, including of course Taunt Warrior and Ramp Druid. So if you plan on playing either, you know, those particular decks, he's pretty good. He's also good in that like this token Druid deck that also runs them. I think it's called Menagerie Druid. It's pretty good in there. And Twin Emperor Becklord, tier 1 in regards to Cthulhu decks. If you have no intention to play a Cthulhu deck, then this guy is absolute trash, but Cthulhu is free, so it's actually Cthulhu decks. Cthulhu Warrior is probably pretty good, and Cthulhu Mage, the deck guide on that should be out now. Cthulhu Mage, pretty good. I had a blast playing Cthulhu Mage. So definitely not a bad legendary to just keep if you plan on testing or playing Cthulhu anytime soon. Gruul, you can disenchant this guy, tier 3 for sure. Medivh has found its way into quite a few decks, whether you're playing Reno decks, you're playing the new Control Mage decks. He runs them in some Warlock decks he's played in. So definitely not the worst legendary. I'd keep him if you have him. Boogie Monster, tier 3 for sure. Never been a good card. Alexstrasza, she's not tier 1 because she's not like a super staple in any particular deck unless you're running like a Freeze Mage deck or a Control Mage deck. But she's a neutral legendary, which means you can throw her into kind of whatever you want, and she can take a 9 mana 8/8 that sets either player's health to 15 can work in a lot of situations, so I would actually hold on to her. I wouldn't disenchant her, and if you're looking to build like a Freeze Mage or of course a Control Mage, she's a great card to look after. So definitely not one of those cards you want to disenchant. Malygos kind of falls under the same route as Alexstrasza, fits into like very niche decks, but because it's neutral, you know, it fits into Miracle Rogue, it fits into like a Burn Priest, or not a Burn Priest, or a Burn Mage if you happen to play like, you could play instead of Freeze Mage, you can play her in Freeze Mage in replace of like Archmage and things like that if you happen to want to run that particular build. So I would definitely keep Malygos, and of course with these being classic kind of legendaries, yeah, they're going to be around a while, and then depending again on the meta is when they rise and fall. So like, you know, 2 or 3 months from now, these two cards could really make their way into a particular deck with new cards that opened up. So I wouldn't go out of my way to disenchant them, but they're also good cards to craft if you have some extra gold laying around. Or extra dust laying around. Mayor, just bad. It's too random. There's nothing competitive about it. Norse Domu falls into the same thing. There's just better cards. You can tier 3 disenchant both these guys. And Ixia, this is interesting, right? Because she was actually found in Token Druid back in the day. She's not the worst, because an Ixia Savage Roar is always good for Druid if you're, you know, on a budget and you're looking for some like OTK Druid deck or whatnot. but you could probably disenchant a Nixia and get yourself some staples and some decks. Osrook, pretty bad elemental in my opinion. Some people play him. I think he's absolutely trash in comparison to like Primal Lord or even the Servant. So you could disenchant him and get yourself some staples if you're wanting to play an elemental deck. Sagoth, again, really cool card. I like him a lot. Played him in my Control Warrior back in the day when Quest Warrior wasn't a thing. But in regards to like staples in a deck, he's not one of them. You can disenchant him, not really have a worry about anything. Ysera, another classic legendary, pretty good card, fits into Dragon Priest, late game. She's just a good card to have in your collection. So don't disenchant her if you have her. Not that she's a staple in any particular deck, but she's just a good one to have. And if she's in your deck and you throw her down, she lives a couple turns, she generates a lot of value. Cthulhu is a free legendary, so I don't know why you disenchant him. Cthulhu decks are pretty fun. When he rotates out of standard, I would say you can disenchant him, but until then I'd hold on to him. Deathwing fits into Ramp Druid, sometimes Control Warrior. That's about it. He's in the classic set, so he's not going anywhere. If you can get away with not disenchanting him, that'd be okay. But if you're brand new, you open up a Deathwing and you want to build some decks, and Deathwing instead of like I keep bringing up Savannah High mains just because Hunters are really cheap decks to start with, or Mage, you know, you're really looking to get Primordial Glyph. 2 glyphs are better than a deck with Deathwing, in my opinion. This guy's tier 3 for sure, not staple in any deck. You don't really need him at all. N'Zoth, definitely a great guy, tier 1 for sure. Yeah, he fits, you know, N'Zoth Priest, N'Zoth Warrior, N'Zoth Shaman. You can play N'Zoth in any deck. He's a neutral dude. He kind of shines more so, you know, in the Priest because the quest revolves around him, the Warrior because it's a very control-based class, to Shaman because of like Wide Eyes, and he's just a good card. So I wouldn't get rid of him. Yogg used to be really good. I used to put him in tier 1 because of the fact that he was just fucking nuts, and most of the time you would turn around the game in your favor that you had no right in winning. He would give you that right to now somehow win the game, but ever since the nerf, he's been seen less and less. Sometimes he still makes those crazy super comebacks, so putting him into your like Spell Mage deck, or you know, in your Druid deck, it's not the worst thing in the world because there's a lot of spells in those decks, but in regards to competitive play and staples in decks, he's just not one of them. And then we have the Rage Unbound, which is again found in a very particular decks, kind of meme decks that run Barns, so you can play like Barnes, get Rage Unbound pulls another Rage Unbound, and then you just got some crazy tempo play. But is it consistent? No. Is it found a lot on ladder? Not really. But besides that, he's found in Ramp Druid, but like I mentioned in the more so at the start of the video, Ramp Druid, very, very expensive deck to build, and I do not recommend any beginner to intermediate player spending, you know, 20,000 dust to make that particular deck. So you can disenchant this guy kind of without a worry. All right, so that's going to end our legendary disenchant guide there. If you have any further comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. Hopefully I went over all of the cards as much as I could as quickly as possible. I know I could have ranted, I could have talked much more about these cards, but I kind of want to make this not as short as possible, but I don't want to ramble on too much where the video is like 3 hours or 4 hours long and we never get to the end of it. So if you have any particular questions or you want to just add on to what I've said because you know you're wanting to help any beginner to intermediate player wanting, you know, further help on what to disenchant, feel free to leave your regards and feedback in the comment section below for those players who are looking for that additional help. So as always, guys, I will catch you in the next episode when the new set of cards comes out, and until then, if not, I'll see you in the next video. As always, I'm Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.